Studio by Chambers Umezulike. Chambers Umezulike is a development expert, program coordinator at Connected Development. Chambers, you're welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, the 2017 budget has been presented to the National Assembly, and the duties were presented in the State House yesterday by the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, and we'll be taking a look at the 2017 budget predictions and some of the valuables in the 2017 budget, and then we'll be looking at the position of the civil societies organizations. And Mr. Chambers is from there. Mr. Chambers, what is your overall appraisal of the 2017 budget predictions?
Okay, we actually welcome the presentation of the 2017 budget by the President just a few days ago. And we also extol the fact that we have increased capital expenditure in health and education by almost 13 billion naira from on the 2017 budget away from the 2016 budget. But we're also not part of the gyrations that once you just increase capital expenditure in sectors that you're going to have improved sectoral performance or improved sectoral service delivery. There might actually, in most of all these sectors, there are some underlying reforms that are actually needed before you can actually start getting results. And that has been the seascape of this government. Once you just inject money into the economy, recession will go away. Once you just put money into a sector, we are going to have a miracle. It is not so. Rather, it actually shows gross misunderstanding of the elements of macroeconomics. The problem has always been implementation crisis, as well as lack of transparency, accountability, and citizen engagement in governmental spending. Talk about participatory budgetary processes. We didn't see that in the preparation of the 2017 budget, and it is actually a proviso according to the Fiscal Responsibility Act that when you are preparing a new budget, that you should actually involve all the relevant stakeholders. But we didn't actually see that in the preparation of the 2017 budget. Talk about the performance of the 2016 budget. It is also a proviso according to the Act that before you present a new budget, that you should do an analysis of the performance of the previous one. We didn't see that. And from our experience in my organization, we track how government implements capital funds intended for local communities in health, education, and environment. From our experience in tracking governmental implementation of some capital projects in the 2016 budget, most of them are still at the contracting stage. And if you could remember so well, the government has only been able to release around 753 billion.
For capital expenditure?
Yeah, for capital expenditure on the 2016 budget. That's around 42%. And we've not heard from them about how they've spent that money. We've actually written to the Ministries of Education, Health, and Water Resources. How much have you gotten so far? What projects are you going to be carrying out? Who is the contractor? What's the implementation timeline and status? We've not heard from them for almost 2 months. Then if almost of all these capital items are still at their contracting stage, that will lead to my second comment on how the government intends to manage the 2016 spillover in 2017. With the whole kerfuffle, with the whole confusion we're seeing already, how are they going to manage that? And if you could remember, while the government was preparing the 2017 budget, at the same time they were still releasing funds for some capital items on the 2016 budget. That means there might be some capital items on the 2016 budget that might not later get funds as the government continues implementing the 2016 budget, and that they wouldn't reflect on the 2017 budget. And based on content, for an example, the government is planning based on 305 to $1, and we have several rates.
Okay, and just before we come to that, are you saying the government has contravened some of the
Fiscal Responsibility Act? Yeah.
Yes, laws that back the preparation of a budget?
Yeah, even on participatory budgetary processes, then also on an analysis of the performance of the 2016 budget should have come before this particular presentation. Also, the MTEF has not been approved. It should have been also approved before the presentation of this 2017 budget. So on content, for an example, the government is planning based on 305 to $1. It is not realistic. You have a deficit of almost 2-point-something trillion. Who is going to lend you money based on that particular calculation? The government is planning production of 2.2 million barrels per day.
Delta
yeah, they've not resolved it. For an example, the short-term revenues we actually got in the implementation of the 2016 budget, the Niger Delta issue actually contributed to it, and the government has not found a way to actually resolve this problem, and are making a projection of 2.2 million barrels per day in the 2017 budget. Then also look at the capital component of the 2017 budget. What we have there is just around 2.something trillion naira. That's just around still at 30%. That's so nanoscopic to what we actually need to stimulate the economy. But we have some positive notes on the 2017 budget, such as the recapitalization of the Bank of Industry by around $1.3 billion. Then we also have plans to establish export promotion zones, special economic zones, and all that. These are just the few positive notes that we have. And also the government is planning next year based on $42 per barrel. Yeah, that's actually quite a little bit realistic. Yeah. If OPEC can still continue in the path of cutting down oil production.
Yes, I was just going to ask you if the civil society group is comfortable with that $42 per barrel of crude oil, being that oil has stabilized a little bit at $50 per barrel now.
Exactly.
Are we getting it right in this aspect?
No, that one is okay. If OPEC can still just cut down production, yeah, it's still okay. 42 is actually quite a little bit realistic.
Okay, so talking about the capital expenditure in the 2017 budget, for the first time we had about 30% in 2016 budget, though not fully implemented yet. What was the civil society looking at, or what recommendations did the civil society make in terms of reviewing upward the capital expenditure for 2017 budget? What were you looking at?
Okay, like I said while I was introducing the issue, we actually extol the fact that we have increased expenditure in health and education. For an example, under education we have around 50 billion, under health we have around 51 billion. Though that's still, for health, that is actually still below the 15% Abuja declaration. On education, that is still below the 26% UNESCO benchmark. Then also, okay, on the capital expenditure, we have power, housing, and works having around 500 billion, followed by transport, and followed by other items. We don't actually have any problem with that. The problem is actually implementation crisis, if it's going to be implemented well, and the fact that the government didn't actually deploy lessons from the implementation of the 2016 one in the implementation of the 2017 preparation and projections. That's actually just our problem. But if you look at the whole 30%, around 2.2 trillion, that is actually around $4 billion. That's so little to what we actually need to stimulate the economy. Look at President Trump. He's actually injecting around $600 billion into the economy just on infrastructure. And just $4 billion is what we're going to be spending. So you actually have to rework on the whole stuff. You can't have overhead and recurrent expenditure taking over 80% of your projections in all these sectors, and the capital component will just be having little percentages.
Okay, this has been rolled out already. The 2017 budget details have been rolled out. So in the preparation of 2018, what percentage should the government be looking at when it comes to capital expenditure?
Lagos is currently doing 60-40, 40 for capital, 60 for recurring. Yeah, so the government should actually be planning in that regards. For an example, look at the budget deficit. We have almost 2.something trillion naira. But look at the State House appropriation. Just the overhead at State House is quite alarming. Some kind of unimaginable projections by an increment of over 200% from the 2016 one, on feeding, on international travels, on payment of electricity bills and all that. If this government actually meant that they're going to be cutting down on the cost of governance, they shouldn't have made such projections. And that actually led to that particular deficit that we have. So the government should actually prioritize, be prudent when you're talking about 2018. They should prioritize, they should be prudent, and they should actually show Nigerians that we're actually in a recession, and the government is making some crazy projections for overhead at the State House. They should actually cut down on that with respect to 2018.
Okay, so to what extent is a civil society working towards, impressing on the government to, beat down the recurrent expenditure we normally have in budget? It has become a style of life where the recurrent is going higher and higher and the capital is reducing. What effort have you put in place as civil society organizations to put more pressure on government or educate government further on why we need to have an upward review in the capital expendiure of our budget?
We've actually written them severally, and in several stakeholder meetings we have, and we have governmental representatives participating in. We've always pointed this out, that you can't have recurrent at 70 and you have capital at 30. That is not possible. We can't be able to economically develop in that respect. We can't have steady electricity in that respect. We can't have expanded or improved infrastructure in that respect. So we've written them, and we've always been commenting on this in several platforms that we've seen ourselves on.
Okay, have you started the process of, looking deeply into the budget? There are so many social intervention funds that were provided in the 2016. Much of that has not been deployed to sectors that we're meant to deploy to. Have you done an assessment on this? And if you have, what further solutions have you profiled? What further suggestions have you made to the government?
First of all, we're not given the chance to make to put in our recommendations, because that should have been part of the 2017 preparation. We should have been given a platform. We should have been invited to actually share our views on how the government can start getting it right. And this is actually very, very key. I wouldn't want us to actually put a blanket on the performance of the 2016 budget, because if you look at the optics, everyone is talking about the 2017 budget. The 2016 one has not been implemented by up to half of it. So I think that is actually still very, very, very key. We should actually focus on making sure that the 2016 one will be implemented. Like they've said that it will be till mid next year that they will then start the implementation of the 2017 one. Let's give the 2016 one proper attention and see how it is going to perform then before the 2017 one.
Okay, you now look at the debt service, which is about which is groping about 1.66 trillion naira. Yeah. And you look at the statutory transfers, which is about 419.02 billion naira, and the government is talking about borrowing 29.9 billion. Don't you think this is going to, increase what we budget every year for debt service?
It's going to affect it probably, though they're actually saying that they've not passed the benchmark, because according to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it is actually when it reaches around 3 trillion, the amount you're borrowing in that particular budget implementation. That's actually when concerned stakeholders, that's actually when you've actually breathed the law.
So should we continue to borrow until we get to the benchmark?
I'm not actually saying. The problem is not even borrowing. The problem is actually what you're doing with the money. If the masses are not seeing the implementation of that particular amount of money you are borrowing and all that, that's where the challenge comes from.
Okay, so we've been having the capital expenditure in the budget. We had about 30% when we had 6.06 trillion last year, and this year we're having about 30% too, when we have about a 20% upward increase in what we had in 2016, which is about 7.2 trillion naira. One will begin to wonder if we could not meet up with the relevant sectors in terms of infrastructure, such as power, such as housing, such as transportation, road construction, and the likes. Is there any likelihood that we are going to meet up with the full implementation of the 2017 budget in this aspect?
Yeah, I don't know how that is going to happen, because if you look at the projected revenue on the 2017 budget, that's around 4.94 trillion naira. We have the oil, what we're expecting from oil, around 1.98, non-oil around 1.37 something. Then also from recovered loots, yeah, we have around 500 billion and all that. Yeah, it is not quite realistic. Based on oil, we're still focusing so much on oil. We're not focusing more on attracting investors. We are not focusing more on having some wonderful export promotion strategy, because the problem is actually dollar deficit, forex deficit. If we can be able to attract enough of it, the country will, the economy will stabilize again. So that's actually the problem. That revenue realization plan is not quite realistic. And if we don't get such revenues to be able to implement the 2017 budget, it will start having the problem the 2016 one is having now.
Okay, so what areas should the government be looking at in terms of independent revenue? We are keeping oil aside. So what areas should the government be looking at? Whether tax, whether income tax, whether customs, excise duties? What other levels, what other sources of independent revenue should the government be looking at? And if they look at this, how can they make it better from what we have obtained in 2016?
Yeah, I think the concentration of the government should actually be on improving forex earnings. And that should be, okay, look at agriculture for an example. Enough from all these theater-like kind of presentations and all that. The government should practically find a strategy to improve agricultural performance all around the country, and also mechanize it. Because when you are just exporting raw materials to other country, you don't earn much. It's when you've been able to add value to it that you can be able to earn more. So there should be a coherent strategy on how best we can be able to maximize agriculture so well, to be able to increase the export size. Then the government should also concentrate on attracting foreign investors. It's only through foreign capital that you can be able to get the economy working again. And I don't know, since the government came to power over going to 2 years now, I don't think they've actually been able to attract up to 10 foreign investors. Well, when the infrastructure is not there, when the power is not there, and when the government is showing that they can't be able to ensure macroeconomic stability. You have like 5 forest regimes all over. You don't have coherency between the Ministry of Finance and the central bank. These are things that boost investors' confidence. So when you don't have them in place, investors wouldn't come and invest. Okay. So they should actually work on that, how we can be able to start. We should have personnel from the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry all over the world looking for investors, looking for ways to attract, to bring foreign capital to the country. But paradoxically, most of them have been leaving because of poor ease of doing business and some other. So when the government was actually coming in power, we were thinking that there will be improvement in a lot of stuff, that there should be there would be a total transposition from the way things were being done before. But it's quite unfortunate that we couldn't see that. So they should focus on agriculture and how they can attract, to be able to improve export size, or to increase it, and how they can also be able to attract foreign capital, so that we can be able to create jobs, we can be able to do a lot of stuff, and we can be able to get out of the recession.
Okay, you made a relevant point about focusing on agriculture and adding value to what we produce.
Yeah, we must add value. So
does that include, bringing back to life, resuscitating the moribund industries that hitherto, produce products and export and then employ so many other youth?
Exactly. And the government shouldn't be doing it by banning and unbanning items. The government actually intends to unban the 41 items they banned initially. That's not the way to do this. Look at rice for an example. Why should they ban the importation of rice when you can't be able to produce what you consume? We can't be able to satisfy domestic demand. And the government just banned it, and look at what happened. The price skyrocketed. So most of all this, the problem is just their strategies and the policy round tripping from here to here, back to here and all that. There should be a clear policy framework on most of all these issues, so that we can be able to start getting it right.
Okay, but Talking about ban on importation of rice, are you saying there are no positive results because there is increased awareness through the CBN Anchor Borrowers Program, where KB is producing rice 3 times in a year, where Ebonyi is doing more, where I think, shouldn't we begin to focus on how to consume the rice we produce, since they have met at least 90% of the standard of the one that is imported in the country?
This is actually a globalized world. Honestly, you can't force people on the choices that they should make. What the government should actually focus on is actually improving domestic production, improving the quality, making it more competitive, so that Nigerians will prefer to buy local rice than to buy the foreign one. But putting an outright ban, for an example, what was the price of rice before this government came to power, and what is actually the price of rice now? When you ban, you encourage smuggling, you skyrocket the price, and all that, you create fear and panic in the market. Yeah, so the focus should actually be on incentives, on subsidies, on ways to actually be able to enable rice production farmers to be able to produce more and increase the quality, make it competitive and all that, instead of something like outright bans.
Okay, going forward, and as a way of rounding up, you have written to several ministries, trying to keep a tab on what they do as regards
governmental spending.
Yes, governmental spending in the budget. What different? Because from what you have said, not so much result has been achieved from your end.
Yeah.
On trying to put government at their own end. So what's different thing do you want to do as civil societies to make sure that as watchdogs you keep government on their toes as regards the implementation of the 2017 budget?
Yeah, that's actually the focus of connected development. We have an initiative, Follow the Money. We track governmental implementation of these funds in local communities. From our 2016 experience, for an example, a lot of primary health care centers, the funds are allocated for their rehabilitation and all that. Most of them are still at the contracted stage. And when we engage governmental agencies that actually responsible for the implementation of some of these funds, we wrote FYI requests to them and all that. Most of them are actually they don't want to reply. Most of them did not give us the information we actually needed so that we can be able to monitor the implementation so well. But we're going to continue doing our best. We are still very much fixated on the 2016 budget. We are going to see the head of it or the end of it. Yeah, so we're actually still tracking the implementation in health, education, and environment in local communities as we even go into next year. Then on the 2017 one, we are preparing our strategies, creating awareness online, creating our awareness offline, engaging those governmental agencies, and also community engagement, trying to let communities know what have been assigned for them, what have been appropriated for them in health, education, and the environment, to also enable them. When you create that awareness, they will even start asking questions, and they can even engage the relevant governmental agencies in their own capacity. So we'll continue doing our best.
Okay, when you talk about inability to get information from some
governmental agencies,
yes, are you aware of the Freedom of Information Act, and to what extent have you leveraged on this act to get the agencies to give exactly what you want?
Yeah, we always use it. We always quote relevant articles.
Are we taking some of them to court?
No, we've not. It's not actually part of our core, what we actually do. But we've been getting some reasonable responses. For an example, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency is actually the implementation agency of around 10.5 million naira for the rehabilitation of a primary health care center in Akwa Ibom State. Yeah, when we went on there for a field visit, we noticed that there was no sort of implementation. That should be around a month ago. Then we came back to Abuja, and we then wrote them what's happening to the money. We are following this money. We want to make sure that this project will be implemented and all that. Yeah, they then wrote us back that the project is actually still at the contracting stage. And that is actually the fate of most of the projects, capital items on the 2016 budget. So once in a while, we get responses, but most of them, they don't reply, despite the fact that we're leveraging on the Freedom of Information Act and writing letters based on that.
Okay, yes, as your parting word, your final word there, what and what should change grossly in the 2017 budget?
Okay, when the president presented the budget, he called it, budget of economic recovery and all this stuff. The government should actually come up with a very, very coherent and comprehensible strategy for us to get out of this recession. The president made mention of a plan, economic recovery and growth plan, which no one has seen anywhere. We need a strategic document, projections for a year, 2, 3, 4, on how we're going to get out of this recession. The several forest rates that we have out there, the government should actually find a way to harmonize that, because that is actually very, very key. That's what is causing inflation, panic in the market, and all that. Then also increase transparency, accountability, and citizen engagement in governmental spending is also quite very, very clear. Quite very, very important, and also a lot of export promotion strategies so that we can be able to export more and earn more for us, to be able to get out of the recession. Okay,
that's Chambers Umezulike, and he's a development expert with the program coordinator at Connected Development, and we've been speaking on the 2017 budget, the position of the civil society. Mr. Chambers, thank you so much for coming on our program.
Yeah,
and we hope when next we call you, you'll be on our program again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And as the end of our first interview segment, we'll just take a short break, and when we return, another interview segment will be on.
No, it is not taking the laws into their own hands.
Your Excellency, but do you agree that there were accusations that you made during the campaign that were not necessarily founded?
Me?
Yes.
If the party doesn't have a direct influence over the legislative arm of government, how come the party held a primary election? Senate?
The party provided the platform only.
I actually disagree with you, Senator. I think draconian laws would affect more so the masses, the people who do not even have to begin with.
What do they call the incident of October 2006?
No impeachment. That's they call it rascality.
Rascality. This is the Osasu Show.
Harmattan season is usually a dry and dusty period associated with low humidity. It can also be described as a hot, dry, and dusty wind that blows over West Africa.